Вярвах аз, че вечно ще живее. Най-хубавите ми години отне и после си замина, ала още те търся. Като птица съм свободна, но на воля не отлитам. От години свикнала съм да обичам само тебе. Като птица съм свободна, но на воля не...
Uncle Trevor and Matt here, the end of another day of our Balkan trip. This is our first full day in Belgrade, and I don't know what day number it is, probably about 5. Anyway, what's happened? Well, been another pretty disastrous day. I have to say, of all the trips I've ever taken, I don't think I've ever had one where so much has gone wrong. The exception possibly being a trip that I did in 2001 to New Zealand, where I lost my wallet on the plane and that kind of screwed up the whole holiday. But that was actually only one almighty mistake that messed up the trip, whereas this is this series of bad luck and mistakes. So what's happened today? Well, we got up, we went for a nice doner kebab for breakfast. Breakfast of Champions, really friendly guy that served it to us. So filled good night's sleep and filled up, ready to go. We went to St. Saba's church. Now that is a new cathedral that they built. It was interesting, it was started in 1935, and by 1941 it got to about 10 metres high, and it was stopped because of the war. And then the communists kind of prevented it from being built further on. And I think what was built was used as a depot for the Nazis and then Tito's troops. But there was pressure to build it, and in the end, in 1985, the communists, kind of in a very symbolic retreat from their former position, said yes, the church could build the church of St. Saba, and construction began. And it said it was completed in 2020, and they were going to have a big opening ceremony with Putin there, but because of COVID that never happened. That said, when we were in, it looked like there was a bit that wasn't finished, so whether it's even complete is another matter. It's built on the site where the Ottomans burned St. Saba's remains, his relics, and it's basically like the national shrine of Serbia. It's an enormous building. It's one of the largest Orthodox church in the world, and probably one of the largest churches, full stop. And it's, from the outside, it's not that special. It's covered in marble and that, but inside it is pretty spectacular, and it's modelled on Hagia Sophia, and that's quite nice, because I've been to Hagia Sophia a few times, and I mean, it's an amazing building, and again, not as good from the outside as the inside. But, of course, that was converted into a mosque, and then a museum, so they did uncover some of the mosaics, and now the people of like Erdogan has converted it back into a mosque, so a lot of the beautiful stuff's covered up again. And this is kind of what Hagia Sophia would look like if it was allowed to be truly beautiful. And it is pretty spectacular, you know, so you get a sense of Hagia Sophia in its heyday. And indeed, I think the Metropolitan of Serbia said, well, since they've made Hagia Sophia a mosque again, let's look at this as the new Hagia Sophia for the world. Wishful thinking, methinks. But so we went there, and then we decided to walk to the railway station to book our tickets back to Podgorica. And you know, unlike the horrific bus journeys we've had, we were going to take a night train, you see, and you couldn't book them online. I tried, so you got to go to the station to book them. We got lost, went the wrong way, had this really long walk in burning sunshine, but eventually got to the railway station, which was unfinished. Like they're building a new one, and they've only completed the lower layers and not the top, so it was a construction site. So we had a bit of trouble finding the ticket office, and then when we did, we found out that the train was all booked up, so we can't go on it. So that left us with a bit of a quandary. What we did is we went, because next to the railway station is the House of Flowers, which is actually where the grave of Josip Bronz Tito, the communist leader of Yugoslavia, is buried. And it's called the House of Flowers because that's what it was called. It was his summer house, and he's buried in his summer house. And next to it is a museum of Yugoslavia, which was really, I mean, there was a little museum about Tito around his grave, and that was quite interesting. He's always been a figure I've really admired, I have to say, that he held this country together and be a very difficult country to unite. And he did it through a doctrine of tolerance and coexistence. And he also, managed to keep ties open with the West and the East and started an online movement. So I think he was really quite an inspirational figure in the communist world. But the Museum of Yugoslavia, it charted, I guess, the history of socialism in Yugoslavia and the Yugoslavian state. But it was a bit like Kim Jong-un has a similar one where it's all the gifts that were given to Tito. So there's like this variety of random gifts, including a massive collection of batons for some reason. He was well into batons. And, some were like from school children and some were like from craftsmen in Yugoslavia. And, then there was like Javan shadow puppets and, there was dolls from Myanmar and all this kind of stuff. So really quite interesting. And anyway, so we went to that. We then went back to the hotel because we had another problem that it turns out I'd lost the bank card. Now, bank cards were a problem anyway because I lost all my bank cards before I came out here. So we were actually borrowing Tom's mum's card. We'd lost that. We looked for it, spent it yesterday in the pharmacy. So I don't know where it had gone. But anyway, so we had to cancel that. But then, of course, we had no bank card. So we had to get money transferred to Tom's bank card. And then we had to sort out the problem with the train. Like, how are we going to get back to Montenegro? And of course, the bus is an option, but do we really want kind of what's essentially going to be like a 12, 13-hour bus journey, since the other two were horrendous? And so in the end, I checked the website and booked flights, which I don't normally do. And they're not technically internal flights because it's a different country. But we've booked flights from Belgrade to Podgorica, which kind of also solves another problem in that they may have taken our baggage to Belgrade Airport. Now, the person who runs the hostel, she got a friend in the airport, and they checked, and they said the baggage hadn't even arrived in Podgorica yet. So it's not arrived in Podgorica, but it may have done by the time we get there. So we could actually just pick our baggage up from Podgorica. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But we can also just check that it's not been taken to Belgrade, and then go to Podgorica and check what's happening with the baggage. And then, of course, when we're in Podgorica, we're ideally placed to then go on to Shkodra, to my friend Marion in Albania. And, of course, Albania was always the main part of this trip. So that's that. We've done what we came to do in Belgrade, which was see the Tito stuff. We'd come to see Tito and to see these signs of communist Yugoslavia. We've got a full day tomorrow in Belgrade. There's loads we haven't seen yet. After we'd sorted all the money out and the flights, we actually just had a wander down through towards the Parliament building and beyond. And that's a whole part of Belgrade we hadn't been before. Belgrade's nice, and it's a big city, but it does look a lot like most of the European cities. The Parliament building looks like that big church in the middle of Helsinki, and, parts of it remind me of Sofia, parts of it remind me of Berlin. It's just a European city. And yeah, that's that. There's nothing that's really jumping out at me about Belgrade, but there's nothing particularly offensive about it either. So yeah, that's that. So that's what we did this evening. We had a little wander. I bought another book because I'm worried about running out of reading material. They don't seem to be any Serbian authors, but it's another Bosnian author. It's called Mesha Selimovic, The Fortress, and it looks quite good, so quite excited about that. So that's that. Again, we've lost a card, we can't go on the train, so pretty crap day, 2 more bits of bad luck, but we've overcome both of them, and I'm sure sometime the luck's going to change and it's all going to go swimmingly. Other than that, it's bit of the unluckiest holiday ever, but that's life. These things happen. So that's it from me, Uncle Travelling Matt. Keep travelling.